Hello, everybody. It's Joel here from Manchester News. It is just past 11:30 here, BC time in Canada, which makes it 7:30 over in the UK. So tomorrow, Manchester City, big Champions League second leg, taking on PSG for a chance to make it to the Champions League final. PSG looking for their second trip to the Champions League final in the consecutive seasons. It'll be the first time in a while that a team has been able to do that. Man City looking for their very first trip to the Champions League final ever. They lead 2-1 after the first leg. So I thought it'd be a nice thing today to bring in a different perspective. People who've been watching my Instagram lives lately know that I do an Instagram live usually on a weekly basis with Big Steve, who I see in there right now. And today I'm just waiting on somebody who I've been following for quite a while now in the footballing world. She's Parisian, I believe, originally. She's lived sort of a little bit all over the place. And she is living in London now as a journalist, but she follows PSG, so I thought it'd be a nice idea to bring in a PSG perspective. And you know what? Steve is on here too, so I can maybe... I'm not sure if we can do a three-way thing or not with this, but I am going to wait a couple of minutes here, see if Lisa Leroux is going to be coming on. If not, I will send her a quick little invite. I just talked to her a couple of minutes ago, so she should be coming in here shortly. But it is D-Day, as they say, for the Champions League semifinals, as the second leg's coming up. It is all level with Chelsea and Real Madrid, so there's going to be a big second leg over there. And there is also going to be, well, PSG looking to reverse that scoreline, 2 away goals. They've got their work cut out for them in there. So I see Lisa is on there now. This is my first time talking to her in a while. We've only chatted sort of on social media, so I am going to bring in Lisa, and then we will preview the big second leg next tomorrow between PSG and Manchester City. So let's bring in Lisa now, and let's get this. All right, just connecting here.
Hello.
Hey, Lisa, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's nice to finally chat with you in person. I know we've had lots of email discussions. I know
Yeah, officially.
I'm always checking out your Twitter handle, seeing some of your updates and things like that going on. So how's everything? You're over in London, right?
I'm in London. Yeah, everything's going quite well. Just excited for this next week. We'll see what happens, but just hoping the best for PSG, I guess.
It's gonna be a very interesting. I know a lot of people looked at the 2-1 and the fact that it's 2 away goals. It's only 1 goal though. On the other hand, so we've seen teams do a lot better away from home. There's a lot less pressure and so on. So we're gonna get into that. So I guess first off, let's talk about the opening leg. PSG. How would you assess their full performance throughout 90 minutes in the first leg?
Yeah, I mean, I think L'Equipe said it best, the French newspaper. It was a team of two different halves. It was a match of it was like two different matches were played in two different halves. The first half, PSG dominated. It seemed like they would be doing it. I was like, this is probably some of the best play we've seen from PSG in a while. Everybody really seemed on form. And then the second half, everything turned around. They just fell apart, but also I think City just rose from the ashes and they were absolutely incredible in that second half. And yeah, I mean, honestly, they deserved that win. I was worried that they would even get a third away goal. So yeah, it was fully deserved. And that is all without Sergio Aguero. So, possibly he will be playing tomorrow. And so I think that will be an even bigger feat. Of course, PSG have a few injuries, so not ideal for them, but I think that they have to believe that they can do it. And if they bring their A game, if they are the Paris Saint-Germain that they can totally win. They just need to believe in themselves and actually do it.
Well, we're going to get into the injury situation because that's obviously going to be the big headline. The big question mark coming into tomorrow's game is going to be the status of Kylian Mbappe. It was even kind of a question mark, I feel, going into the first leg because of the knock he took in the weekend fixture prior to the first leg against Mets. Let's go back to the first leg again. Do you think Mbappe was 100%? Because we saw him be, from my opinion, very impressive, cause City's defense a lot of fits in the first half, and then they seemed to keep him relatively in check in the second half. Was his injury a factor, or was he 100%, do you think?
I think it may have been a small factor, but I think that City figured out how to shut him down. Mbappe needs space. He needs to run. His speed is his power. And when he's fast, he is powerful and he's dangerous. And I think they figured out how to shut him down. And honestly, we barely saw him that second half. I think he barely had a shot on goal. And so I think the injury might have given him a knock to his confidence, I would say. But I think City and Guardiola just figured out how to just keep him in check. And I mean, Mbappe is one of PSG's biggest threats. So, they figured out how to subdue that, and they did a good job at it.
And one thing I think, one of the advantages I think Guardiola had this time around that he didn't have, because I remember watching the tie with Monaco back in 2017 between them, is there was virtually not as much known about Kylian Mbappe outside of France, I feel, at that time. Whereas like now, he's won the World Cup, he's taken PSG to the final, he's led them to several dominating league titles. So there's an advantage in that, isn't there, when you have when it's common knowledge, a player, and you can strategize against him, especially somebody who's got a mind like Pep Guardiola, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think in Monaco, no one knew who Mbappe really was, and he came out of nowhere. So it was kind of like, who is this kid? And he just had no pressure because he could not play well and people wouldn't say anything. But when he played amazingly, that's all people talked about. But now he is, he's supposedly the heir to Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. So now all eyes are always on him. And every time he has a bit of an off game, it's just a lot of pressure, I think, on his shoulders. He is still young. What he's done in the few years of his career has been incredible. He already has a World Cup. He's a Champions League finalist. He's won multiple Ligue 1 titles. So I think that does play a bit into it. I think we watch him and just expect amazingness all the time, but sometimes that doesn't happen.
Yeah, no, I mean, when you start off your career just flying out of the gates like that at like a 10 out of 10, to get it to an 11 or 12, it's sometimes just a little bit too much to ask for somebody. And even if they play like a 7 or an 8 out of 10, people are like, well, where's that 10? Where's that magic we saw? Let's talk about PSG this season. Going into this leg, I feel like, first off, PSG has had probably, in my opinion, of the final four teams, they probably had the toughest road to get here. They were able to scrape through that really tough group with Manchester United and RB Leipzig just to get here. They had Barcelona into the round of 16. They had Bayern Munich, the defending champions. Do you think that factor, and the fact that Ligue 1 is competitive for the first time in probably at least 3 or 4 years, is fatigue playing a factor in getting to them at this point in the semifinal?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think it's played a big psychological role as well. I think, beating FC Barcelona and beating Bayern, who was, the one thing that stopped them from winning last year, I think may have played into it psychologically. I think maybe they may have underestimated Manchester City in a way, thinking, we've beat the biggest of the biggest, so we're going to go into this and not thinking that they were just going to scrape by, but thinking it would be maybe a bit easier. And I think, yeah, for the first time in a long time, Liga is quite competitive. And I think they've lost more games than previously at home. And I think that that's probably knocked their confidence. But in saying that, they've also played really, really well outside. So, maybe this is what they're waiting for. Maybe they'll wait to have a comeback.
And another thing that they have done, particularly in the knockout stage, is exercised a lot of demons. Obviously, you see the emotion, what that means to them to beat a team like Barcelona. All Parisian fans will have nightmares of that 6-1 game from a few years ago. There's Bayern Munich denying them the title as well. Do you think there's any kind of emotional letdown that goes along with something like that, when you have a team that has kind of been the thorn in your side that you finally beat, you finally sort of slay that dragon, but then you're so high on that maybe you can't get your emotions to where they need to be for the semifinal. Do you think that's played into this semifinal thus far?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think especially in the past few years, they've had big matches and then they've had big letdowns. I think, the Barcelona remontada that everyone remembers is a great example of that. But I think, yeah, I think emotions do play a lot into it. I think they put a lot into those first two matches with Barcelona and with Bayern, and I don't think that it's not that they weren't prepared, but I think that at a certain point they became just a bit too complacent, especially in the second half of that first game. And I think that, in the return match, they'll just have to go into it, not think about it, and just give it their all. They'll need to keep possession instead of giving it to Manchester City, which ultimately just exhausted them, which is why Manchester City just seemed like they were so dominant in that second half.
I want to rewind a little bit to some of the decisions PSG made earlier this season. The big one, obviously, is when they released Thomas Tuchel at the start of the new year in favor of Mauricio Pochettino. In your opinion, following the PSG team for as long as you had, was that kind of a question? Because when I think of that move, I think of what Monaco did last year with like Robert Moreno. Didn't have a lot of time to do something good, but then a guy with the face and the stats of Niko Kovac comes around, everybody's gonna like swoop him up. Was it just a case of like somebody with the stature of Pochettino who also has ties to PSG and they wanted to get him as quickly as possible before someone else did, or was there something else into the Tuchel firing in your opinion?
Yeah, I think there were a few different elements. I think that for the first time, PSG was struggling in the French league. They weren't the clear favorites, and I think that the owners or people at PSG just weren't really happy with that. I personally thought Tuchel was doing quite a good job, but I think that a lot of the things that happened with his management maybe weren't seen as well, and I think that the big maybe one of the breaking points was when there was that Champions League match where the racism incident happened. He wasn't really seen as backing his players when all the players decided they would leave the pitch and take a stand. He didn't really back his players as much as he should, or at least that's what the French press saw it as. And I think maybe that was another factor. But I think that, of course, bringing in Pochettino, he's a PSG hero, and of course, everything he was able to accomplish with Spurs was just the perfect opportunity. I don't know if it was planned that Pochettino was just going to swoop in, but I think it was great timing, and I think Pochettino is a really good fit actually for Paris Saint-Germain.
Have you noticed anything differently about how either PSG set up or the way they play that is very different under Pochettino as opposed to under Tuchel?
I think that they're rotating quite a bit. The players, I think they're giving a lot of different players a chance to shine, which I think is really nice. But I think that they just seem to have to be more confident up until the Manchester City match, I would say. They've just kind of attacked these matches against, especially in the Champions League, they've attacked these matches really head on. And at the same time, in the French league, they've been more confident than the first half of the season, especially at away matches, I would say.
Uh, this is one of the rare occasions I was looking back into PSG's track record in the Champions League and specifically in knockout stage matches. They're usually used to flying out of the gates and being ahead going into the second leg of the Champions League. Last year they were trailing to Dortmund and they reversed that score. 27-18 they were down to Real Madrid, but then they couldn't come back there. Does does this change anything for them? Because it's a little bit new for them to have to come back as opposed to, being ahead where they can maybe afford to take it easy a little bit.
I think this could actually be a good thing because I think in the past when they've won by a lot in the first leg, sometimes they've been surprised. I think we saw that with Manchester United when they after lost at home with that late penalty, or again with Barcelona with the remontada. So I think PSG turn up under pressure in the big matches. So I think that they will either play like the second half of that first match and just let Manchester City just run their game, or they'll turn up and they'll just be incredible.
Obviously, when you need a couple of goals, you have to be a little bit more aggressive when you're coming into this second leg. Is there anything else? Is there a massive different approach that you think Pochettino and the team needs to take, or is it just as simple as, well, play like you did in the first half, but do it over 90 minutes?
I think that they just need to have possession of the ball. First of all, they can't let Manchester City run their show because that's what happened in the second half. City had possession and they exhausted the players, and I think that they'll have to focus on the counterattacks and just really play to their strengths. So play to Neymar if Mbappe is playing, of course, play to them, play to Verratti, but they just can't be scared to go for it. They can't sit back and play back, which is what they tended to do in the second half. They'll just have to go for it. Hopefully get some early goal, at least an early away goal. And I think once they get that one away goal, everything will just fall back into place, and then they'll get their confidence, and then that's when they'll be able to do it if they can come back.
Yeah, that's exactly. I was thinking back as you were saying that too. Monaco was down 2 goals, I believe, going into the second leg when they were playing Man City in 2017, and Mbappe, I think, or I forget what it was, but they scored within like 10 minutes or so, and that completely like changed the complexion of that game. So an early goal puts them on their heels. It plants a little bit of doubt, I think, in Man City, and then you never know. Even in a defense as strong as Man City is, that is, I feel like the way PSG climbed back into this tie.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. I think one another away goal early on, and everything's back. They just need one more, and then a big performance by Keylor Navas, and yeah, that could win them the match.
One of the things that I was talking, because I do a weekly thing with Steve, a podcaster with the Big Six, a big podcast over there. He follows Man City all the time. We talked last week about who needs this more, because these are two teams that have a bit of a reputation of obviously dominating their own domestic leagues respectively, but not being able to quite get over that Champions League hump to lift that title. Who do you think needs this more? Because I feel like there's equally as much desperation for both teams to want to get that title and get the monkey off their back. Who needs it more, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point. And there's kind of always been this rivalry with PSG and Manchester City. They're both, they're both teams with a lot of money. They both have a lot of big players, and they both just covet that Champions League so bad. I would say that they both really want it bad. I would say maybe Guardiola wants it more with City because he's been there longer and because so much money has been put into it. But I think, the PSG project from the get-go was to get to that Champions League. The reason why they've spent so much money and have the most expensive attack in Europe is to win a Champions League. So I think, whoever does it first, it'll be prideful points for them, but I think they both really want it, and I think actually once they both win it, it'll be a huge pressure off their shoulder, and they'll probably win it more easily. But I think they want to do it so badly for the first time that it's almost holding both teams back.
PSG have the most expensive attack, like you mentioned. Those are the guys that constantly get the headlines in all of the newspapers and radio shows and whatnot. But one thing that kind of goes unnoticed, and I was even surprised when I looked at this in Ligue 1 the other day, is that PSG also have the best defense if you just look at it in terms of goals conceded. That was a bit of a surprise to me. How do you think they've been able to do that, especially with the loss last season with Thiago Silva, their inspirational captain, moving to Chelsea? How have they been able to stay effective defensively?
Well, I think Marquinhos has been a huge asset. He's always been a big leader at Paris Saint-Germain, and I think, he's really big when it comes to defense, and he's quite a leader, so he lets his voice be heard. And I think that the goal for a while was to get an incredible keeper that, could rival other teams in Europe. I think Keylor Navas has been absolutely amazing this season. He's saved PSG on a lot of occasions. So I think those two players are big assets. But I think also, you know, they have a strong midfield. They have Verratti. They also have Idrissa Gueye. Unfortunately, he won't be playing on Tuesday, but I think they have a lot of really good players. But I think they have a lot of players that just are good leaders and that show a good example. But yeah, we don't really talk a lot about PSG's defense, but it is quite a good one, especially if you look at the different statistics compared to other teams in Europe as well.
You mentioned one of the people that was going to lead me to my next point is Idriss Gueye. He's not going to be included into the next leg because of his red card. How big of a loss is that to PSG?
I think it's a huge loss. I think, he's a player that's quite under the radar. He's not talked about that much. The press doesn't necessarily talk about him a lot, but he's been a huge asset to PSG since he's played. He's just that calm confidence that they need, and he's just always there. He's always getting the ball. He just gets the job done really. So I think it'll be a big loss, but I think that they have other players that can also do the job. But I do think it's a big player to lose, especially in the back. So it'll be
Another
hard.
big, another big player to potentially lose. We're probably not going to know up until kickoff if Mbappe is going to be ready to go or not.
Yeah,
Does Pochettino's game plan change dramatically if Mbappe can't go?
yeah. I think. Well, I would say it changes a lot of things. I think just the team confidence having a player like Mbappe. He's like Cristiano Ronaldo or Messi. When you have those players, who knows what could happen? But they do have other players that can get the job done. I think Icardi could be a good contender, and of course they have Neymar, they have Di Maria. There's also Moise Kean, but I think Mbappe just by his speed and his sheer just ability to finish and get things done, I think it would be a big loss. But fingers crossed he can play. There's differing reports. Nobody really knows if he will be able to start, but if he can't start, hopefully he'll be able to come on at some point.
You and I both know this following League for as long as we've had is that it's got sort of a reputation of being a farmers league, of being sort of a minor system and just being able to develop players to go on to big careers in England, in Spain, in Italy, and so on. I know that very well, having followed Monaco as a kid, knowing the teams they've had and the amount of players that they have sold off, namely Mbappe among other people. But um, how much do you think PSG getting to the final last time around changed people's perspective at all on Ligue 1? Because it's still considered that when they talk about the big five leagues in Europe, Ligue 1 is still in that category.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the perspective has changed these last few years. I think PSG has played a huge role into it. Obviously, they have the ability to attract a lot of big names. So I think having Neymar, having Mbappe, having Di Maria play in the French league has changed a lot of things. But I don't just think it's PSG. I think other players or other teams have been able to do the same. I think Lyon, they have Memphis Depay, Monaco, your team, they have Fabregas among others. So I think that they've been able to attract big names, and I think slowly as they make a place for themselves in Europe, they'll be able to be more respected. But what you said is completely right. I mean, so many of the best players now in the world started in Ligue 1, started in smaller teams in Ligue 1 who play all over the world, who play for La Liga, who play for the Premier League. So I think when people call the French League a farmers league, they do forget that because it's one of the best leagues to train young players, and it's coming up to be one of the best leagues just in general.
Yeah, and you even like even a lot of the players on the French team that won the World Cup. Yeah, sure, there was obviously Mbappe, Griezmann, and whatnot, but there was still a lot of other guys that Deschamps picked up that played parts, Fekir, Thauvin, and so on, Kipembe, and so on. So it's not as if Ligue 1 is only like it's only like PSG that can compete. There's other teams that have shown they can compete with the other teams in Europe. Um,
Yeah, definitely. Especially this season when, the race for the Liga is so close. I think it shows that, if Paris Saint-Germain can get to this point in the Champions League and is still having to compete against other teams to win domestically, I think it shows the level of the other French teams. So I think it can only be a good thing.
how do you think PSG has been able to maintain their energy level, knowing they have so much to play for on a weekly basis? It's not like Manchester City, because Manchester City, they don't officially have the Premier League title wrapped up yet, but it'll take a pretty epic collapse for them to lose. So Guardiola can afford to rest guys like Ruben Diaz, guys like John Stones. He can give De Bruyne a break and whatnot. PSG doesn't, and Pochettino don't necessarily have that luxury. Can that help them though, because they have to stay sharp and there's not too much of a layoff for them?
I would say yes and no. I think it helps in a way because it does just keep them on their toes all the time. They're always playing and they just can't let up like in past seasons where, Liga 1 was just a bit easier for them. They were winning most of their matches. But I think injury wise, it's been quite complicated. There have been, a few injuries this season. And I think playing so much and at such an intense level, I think it can be quite tiring and exhausting, and I think it just makes a team more injury prone, unfortunately, and that's happened this season.
It's no secret Man City is one of the top defenses in all of Europe right now. How does PSG expose them? Is it just like catching them with the speed on the counter, or how do they get the better of Man City in the second leg?
Yeah, I think catching them on a counter and just playing forward, just betting on a mistake or betting on PSG speed, keeping the ball, making sure those passes are nice and crisp, and then just using that to their advantage, using set pieces, just doing what they did in the first half of that match, really. Marquinhos got a great goal, but there could have been other goals. Neymar almost got a goal. So I think it's just really exploiting PSG's advantage, which is speed and counterattacks. And they didn't do that in the second half, and I think that was their downfall, really.
You talked about Keylor Navas and how valuable he's been to the PSG team. He's obviously, along with Neymar, two guys that were, I feel like, brought in not only because they're exceptional players at their position, of course, but more than that, when I looked at that, I looked at, okay, they're looking to bring in some experienced guys who know what it takes to win this competition. Neymar's won it a couple of times with Barcelona. Keylor Navas, I think, won it 3 times in a row under Zidane
Yeah.
with Real Madrid. How much do you think just their experience alone has helped take PSG? Because before those guys got here, they were making it through the group stage, but they were struggling when it came to the knockout stage of the competition. Has their experience helped bring them deep into this competition now on a couple of different occasions?
Yeah, I think they just changed the team so much. Both those players, Navas has so much experience, and he's an incredible keeper, really. And like you said, he won the Champions League 3 years in a row, which is unprecedented, really. And just playing, he played with so many elite players. He was coached under Zinedine Zidane, and I think he just brings that calm assurance to the team. And of course, Neymar just brings that superstar power and just his pure skill to it. But yeah, I mean, clearly they were brought in to make that difference, to just to be just that confidence that was really needed. So I think that's why I did that.
Fair enough. Last time around, they were trailing against Borussia Dortmund. Are they going to look to that, do you think, as a way to be like, okay, you know what, we're not used to coming back in these knockout stage matches, but we have done it before in recent memory. Do you think they will look to that and try to draw on that for confidence going into tomorrow's leg?
Yeah, I think as far as confidence, they'll have to do that. They know that they can do it, so they'll just have to get that same motivation. Really, I think each team in each match is different, but I think that they know they can do it because that first half, I think most of us were confident. PSG was going to end up winning at least that match at home. So I think that they'll just have to challenge that, but they know that they can do it and that they have had comebacks and they've seen, we've seen other teams have crazy comebacks as well. So I think it's like Marquinhos said at the end of the match in an interview. He said, if people don't believe we can do it, they shouldn't even come to Manchester with us. So I think that they just have to go in, be confident, go for it, and just leave everything out on the field. Because if they go already thinking, this is already done, there's no point in playing.
Yeah, and PSG know firsthand, obviously, a thing or two about comebacks. Unfortunately,
Exactly.
usually on the opposite end of things, but
Exactly.
they know very well that nothing is ever set in stone going into a second leg, no matter what kind of an advantage you have going into it, for sure. Uh,
Exactly.
um, how you talked about the importance of possession. That's something I know, having like written for Manchester News and following Manchester City this season. That's something that is sort of their bread and butter, is being able to hold the ball in possession. They have the guys that can do that, like De Bruyne, like Gundogan, and so on. How can PSG neutralize that and get more possession against a team that thrives off of that, and Guardiola, who is a master at just having the right tactics for that?
Yeah, I think that's a huge challenge for most of Manchester City's opponents. I think keeping players like Kevin De Bruyne just a bit under control is extremely difficult, which is why he's one of the best players in the world. I think if any player can do it, it might be Verratti. He's really good at getting those balls back and just breaking up a team's speed, I would say. But it's definitely going to be difficult, and I think the added element of having Sergio Aguero there, who has just been such an asset to Manchester City all these years. I think it'll be tough, but I think if they use Verratti and other players in defense, it could be done.
I was reading this morning, Pep Guardiola talked about this being like the second leg always being the most difficult and that they have to not get ahead of himself. Obviously, he's been doing a lot of this stuff to take pressure off his team, which is understandable. But PSG have the experience of being at this stage of the competition from last season. Do you think them knowing what it takes to get to the final, does that play into their advantage at all going into this leg?
Yeah, I think playing a final has definitely changed PSG's mentality because before it was always kind of an almost team. Like they almost did it. They almost beat Barcelona. They almost beat this team. And just getting them to the final, especially, it was quite a tough Champions League season. Last season, I think gave them a huge amount of confidence. And I think that now they just want to go and get it done and just win it. So I think even though they lost that last season, I think it gives them even more fuel to this time knowing they can get to a final, but this time trying to win one.
Another thing that stood out to me heading into the first leg of this Champions League tie is first off, the emotions that Neymar has been surprising to me, knowing somebody who has had a lot of success in his career. Maybe not lately in terms of trophies, but he's won this tournament before. He talked about he's going to do everything possible to get PSG beyond this into the final. Is he putting too much pressure on himself, or is he just used to that being Brazilian, knowing he's expected to win the World Cup, knowing he's sort of like being seen as the guy to get it done internationally and at club level? Is that just him taking the pressure on himself, or what is that about, do you think?
Yeah, I think if anything, it's a good thing. I think it's very much his personality. I think, when you see him play with Brazil, he has just as much, if not more, emotions. And I think that that's what drives him as a player. He's obviously he loves the game, but you can tell how much he loves his team, how much he loves his teammates. And I think that he shows it on the pitch. And I think sometimes with players as big as Neymar or, Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo, people will often say, oh, they're quite personal. They play just for their own glory. But I think Neymar has shown, especially recently when so many people talked about him wanting to go back to Barcelona or not being at home at PSG, I think he's showing how much he cares about this PSG team's success. And I think it can only be a good thing. But I think you can also see it with other Brazilian players. I think, when Thiago Silva was playing for Paris Saint-Germain or Marquinhos, you can tell how much this means to them. And I think it can only be a good thing. I mean, clearly Brazil has been quite a successful national team. And I think, they live and breathe football. So I think it can only be a good thing that Neymar is kind of taking that upon himself. And hopefully, he shows it to the other players as well, that they have to be passionate and just go for it and try to win big.
Heading into the second leg, obviously, Idrissa Gueye is not going to be there. Kylian Mbappe may or may not. We're not going to know until really late. Do you foresee Pochettino making any other changes to the starting 11 for PSG going into the second leg?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the good thing, at least, about his team is he does have a lot of options. I think Moise Kean has been such a great addition to this PSG team this season. He's he's just really grown up and matured as a player, I think, with PSG, and he seems to have really found his fit. So I think if Moise Kean plays, he could be a great asset. I think also Icardi has been great. He's obviously a great player as a forward, so I think that he would be really great. And they just have a lot of different options that they could play. They could, swap around a few players, but I think those two would be really great, especially if Mbappe can't play, unfortunately. I think those would be really good replacements. And I think with Idrissa Gueye gone, they'll have to build a really strong midfield, which they have and which they can do. There's also Pereira, who could be a really good player to put in. So they've got some good options.
If PSG are unable to make it through to the semifinal, through the semifinal into the final tomorrow, is that going to be considered a failure amongst most people? We know how tough L'Equipe is on team. We know how tough the French press is when the team doesn't win, and all of a sudden they're their best friends when they like start making a run. We've seen that with the French national team, with other French teams. Would this be considered a failure among PSG fans if they do not make it to the final?
Yeah, I think you said it all. The French press can be your best friend when you win, and they can be your worst enemy when when you fail, unfortunately. So I think I think they were a bit harsh at the end of the Manchester City match, especially when it came to Mbappe and to Neymar. I think, of course, it would be a disappointment, but I think now, it wouldn't be something like the remontada or losing against Manchester United. I think because PSG have beaten Barcelona and Bayern, I think it would be disappointing, of course, but the team has shown how well they can play. I just think it would be a shame if tomorrow they went and played just like they did in that second half at the first match and just kind of let Manchester City run the show, because it's just not what they're capable of. But I think, if they go in, they give their all and they end up losing, I think, it's football, it happens. And we'll just bet on the next year to hopefully do it and win.
Last question: do you have a prediction, score prediction for tomorrow's game?
Oh gosh, score prediction.
If you don't want to jinx it, because I know you're all for PSG, you can totally plead the fifth on this one and leave it if you want. I was just curious.
I'm gonna be optimistic, and I'm gonna say it's gonna be 2-3 for PSG. PSG winning
Three
it.
two, 3-2 for PSG, and that would put them through, right? That would give them three away
That
goals.
will
That
put
would
them
give
through.
them
Yeah,
that would be
exactly.
3-3. Yeah, there you go. All right.
Let's
Well,
see what
we'll
happens.
we'll we'll see what happens for sure. Lisa, I
Exactly.
know you do. I know you're constantly on social media tweeting about things going on. I see your videos on your other Instagram handle. Anything you want to shout out for people to get an insider's look at Ligue 1 stuff or football or anything like that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've just started doing these videos, especially during lockdown, just to give, especially people in England or in the US, just a perspective on the French media and what they say about the Premier League, or about players like PSG and like Mbappe and Neymar, who people are quite interested in right now. So if you want to follow along and see what the French headlines are saying, give me a follow. And thanks for having
Perfect.
me as well.
Of course. Nice to finally chat with you after all this time.
Sure.
All right.
Thank you
Have a
so
good night.
much.
Take care, Lisa.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.